why we think longleaf is important enough to talk about a number of things. It was at one time the largest forest on the whole continent. When the first settlers came to this country, the new country that there were 90 million acres that had longleaf on it, and 60 million acres were dominated by longleaf. It was almost the only tree in the overstory. And that is the largest area on the whole continent, dominated by a single tree species. So it was very important from that perspective. It's also one of the most biodiverse forests, terrestrial forests, in the world. That is a number of species in any unit area. In an area about the size of a normal house, there can be as many as 100 different species of wildflowers and grasses and other plants and insects and other animals, particularly things like that. It's a real attractive forest when it's burned and kept open where you can see through it, that sort of savanna kind of forest. Not many people don't think that's a very attractive forest, very inviting. Rich in wildlife, a lot of recreation potential, but also importantly it produces a wide range of really valuable plants. And that's important because, you probably know this, but over 90% of all of the forest land in the South is privately owned. Federal and state and county and city governments own less than 10% of the forest land in the South. So people like yourself own 90% or more of the forest land. So if we're going to make any strides in conserving forests, keeping the land we have in forest, and putting longleaf back where it ought to go, it'll be up to you and people like yourselves to do that. In 1995, we began to look, or 94, we began to look at around us and realized that we were down to about 3 million acres of longleaf. 3 million is a lot of acres, and when you start with 90 million, you can understand what a big decrease that is. It declined faster than redwoods or wetlands or tropical rainforests, all issues that we all got excited about and raised money for. And my wife was a third-grade teacher, and she would come home from the bank with armloads of things about saving the tropical rainforest or saving the redwoods. Longleaf, right outside our window, was disappearing at an even faster rate. Nobody really seemed to notice. A small group of us thought that was important and began to try to organize around trying to at least save what we had left before it disappeared altogether. And one of the things we realized pretty quickly is not only was that forest disappearing, but foresters and land managers who understood longleaf were disappearing too. They were aging, retiring, or sometimes worse, dying. And a lot of that knowledge was dying with them. We were losing that. So we organized an effort to try to excite some interest in retaining longleaf, first in Alabama, and eventually realized that if it was going to happen on any scale, it had to happen across the whole Southeast. And longleaf grew in 9 states, from Texas to all the way around to Virginia, mostly on the coastal plains. But it actually grows right up into the mountains of Georgia and Alabama, which is a really interesting forest. If you're familiar with these coastal plain longleaf forests, it looks like those turned up on edge. It's the same plants and animals with a few minor differences, but it looks a lot like these forests. It's just arrayed almost vertically. So it covered a wide range. And again, the people who owned it, who managed it, who could impact it, were private landowners. And we realized that for most private landowners, in fact, virtually everyone that we talked to, economics has to be positive for longleaf. You have to be able to make an economic case. Not many people can't afford to manage a forest just for the wildflowers or just for the butterflies or even just for quail. Some can, but most can't. They need to have some income, some return from that investment to make it attractive. We understood that. So we started trying to build an economic case for longleaf. It doesn't start as fast as loblolly and slash. It's a little bit harder to plant and get to live, and we began to attack those barriers with some research and experience. I think Mark is here now. Mark became literally the world's expert in planting longleaf and getting it to grow, and remains the world's expert in that. He doesn't know much else, but he does know that. And so we were encouraged by that, but still people wanted to know, can I make money at this? So we started looking at some of the economic analyses, and it looks like if you just grow trees and sell wood, just the products, the return on investment is about 6%. Well, that's not great, but it's not bad, 6% return on investment. In today's economy, that's pretty good. Not many of us can make investments and get 6% back. When the economy was good, and I would tell people that, and the stock market was booming, they'd say, well, I can make more money than that at the bank. And the only thing I could say was, but if you take your bird dog and your gun to the bank, they put your butt in jail. But you can take it to your longleaf forest. And I think we all recognize that there's a return from owning forest land beyond the finances. It's good. Everybody wants money. Everybody needs money. But there are some returns, less tangible returns, that you get from forest land, and you can do both with longleaf. You don't have to sacrifice one to get the other. And the things that make it economically attractive are, first and foremost, historically, is production of utility poles. That's the highest valued forest product in the South. Over the last 30 years, poles have returned more to the landowner at a rate of about 30 to 35% more than the same tree sold as soft timber. And longleaf produces poles in high proportions. We've got one study at age 39 where we didn't, somebody else planted loblolly, slash, and longleaf side by side. 39 years later, they were all the same size. Longleaf started slower, but it caught up. At age 39, about 8%, you gotta remember that wind's coming from that way, it's not me. About 8% of the loblolly would make a pole with special quality. About 12.5% of the slash would make a pole, and 71% of the longleaf would make a pole. So if 5 times as many trees in your forest are worth 30 to 40% more, and right now it's 100%. Poles are worth twice as much as saw timber. Not because poles went up, but saw timber went down. As the starts went down. That's the other thing about poles. Those markets are stable. They don't go up and down like pulpwood or softwood. So that's a good hedge. Another good economic argument for longleaf is it's risk averse. It's highly resistant to pine beetles, highly resistant to fusiform rust. It's tolerant of fire, almost fire-proof throughout its life. Tolerant to wind, much more than the other southern pines. It can stand even hurricane winds up to about 90 miles an hour. So it protects you against catastrophic loss of your investment. And you know that has value. That's what insurance companies do. They take some of your risk in return for some of your money. That's that premium you pay. Longleaf does that for you naturally on the time. So there are a lot of things that make longleaf economically attractive. Now there are some new markets that really make it even more attractive. I don't know if any of you are raking pine straw. But right now, longleaf straw, people we work with, is getting landowners anywhere from $60 to $300 an acre a year. You can't grow that much wood. You can never make that much money growing wood. The only other crops that have that kind of return are all illegal. You can grow them, but they put you in jail if they catch you. But pine straw changes that whole equation. It makes longleaf sack very attractive. It bumps up the return on investment to 11 and to 12% if you rake straw. So that's better than almost any other forestry investment. Another factor that makes longleaf more attractive, and we were talking about it a few minutes ago with Mr. Dunn, there are a lot of cost share programs now that favor longleaf. They're either upfront, they share in your cost, or reimburse you for the cost of growing or planting longleaf. Cost share prescribed burn-ins, invasive control, weed control, and then in the case of CRP, there's an annual rental payment that goes along with that. So that also sweetens the pot. So we think we've answered the economic question pretty well. Like I say, it's not get rich quick, but it's a way to make money at a good, stable, and acceptable rate. And then finally, the thing that I think makes longleaf most attractive is not the ecology or the economy that's associated with it, it's the history and its role in our culture. It is the tree that built the South and much of the nation. Wood was so durable, so valuable, it was used in construction all over the world. It was shipped to Europe, up the East Coast. I just talked to an architect in Rhode Island who was restoring a 1700s era home there, and all of the trusses, all of the joists were heart pine from Apalachicola, Florida. Old homes all over were underpinned with longleaf because it was so durable. It has a role to play in our country. A lot of people don't appreciate this, and you probably do because of where you're from, but the naval stores industry, the turpentine industry, was America's first export industry. In fact, it had a lot to do with the settlement and development of the New World because it was so valuable in the era of wooden ships. And if you think about it, at that time, in the 1700s and into the 1800s, navies were how countries projected power. That's how they dominated the world. Now, Great Britain, England, isn't much bigger than Georgia. They had an empire that spanned the globe. They used to say the sun never sets in the British Empire. And they could do that because of their navy. They had the strongest navy in the world. The Dutch, a little tiny country that is underwater or below sea level, a lot of it, had colonies in South America and Africa and the East Indies because they had strong navies. And those wooden ship navies had to have naval stores that were called products for so many uses on those ships, to waterproof canvas, to treat rope to keep it from rotting, to caulk the ship. And over time, that entered our whole culture. And we produced the bulk of the world's naval stores, pitch, tar, resin, on the east coast of America. We probably produced 90% of it for over 200 years. So all the navies of the world desired that ship. It became so important that it entered our vocabulary. I know you've all heard of the Tar Heels, the North Carolina athletic team. Well, North Carolina led the world in tar and pitch production for a long time before they finally exhausted the pine forest. How many of you have ever heard the saying, being caught between the devil and the deep blue sea? My grandmother used to say, maybe you have to be a certain age, my grandmother used to say it all the time, and it meant being caught between two bad situations. Well, that came from that era. The seam on either side of the keel of a wooden ship, those two bottom seams, were called the devil seams. And if they leaked at sea, the only way to repair them was to heel the ship over as far as they could, lower a man over the side with a bucket of hot pitch, and he would caulk that seam. And if the wind changed or the ship righted itself, he was caught between the devil's seam and the deep blue sea. There are a lot of other little sayings that we have without even realizing it came from that era. You know, a tarpaulin used to be a resin-treated canvas. It wasn't always a blue plastic thing that FEMA brought out to the store. You know, it's just, you know the bibs that are on the white uniforms sailors wear today? They came about because sailors worked pitch and tar so much in wooden ships. They all had pigtails. They would flap those pigtails, get tar on their hair, and it would get on their uniforms. So the Navy developed these bibs that would clip on to keep the tar off of those white uniforms. Of course, that's not a factor anymore, but they still have those bibs back there. So I think a lot of times we forget what a role longleaf and the products of longleaf played in the development of our country. It's the longest lived southern pine. Most of our southern pines may live 150 years. That's a really old loblolly slash, and most of them are gone before they're 100. Longleaf can live, we know, up to 500 years. We don't know, we used to say 500 because we had some 500-year-old specimens. So now we started to think it can live to lightning density. You know, if you're the tallest thing around and you stand still in the south for 500 years, there's a pretty good chance lightning will hit you. And it kills more mature longleaf than any other cause. And an interesting thing is, the whole time it's alive, it keeps growing. Longleaf never stops growing. I've got cores in my office right now of 250-year-old longleaf that when the stand was thin and they were given room, started growing faster. They expanded their growth. 250, when most pines have been dead for 100, 150 years. If carbon markets ever become important, and who knows if they will or not, longleaf stores carbon for a long time. It can store those same 12 by 12 they put on the houses in Charleston in 1650 are still there, still storing carbon. The products we make from longleaf are durable products. We don't make things that go into the landfill or decompose quickly. The things that we make out of longleaf are solid wood products that last a long time. The Southern Company, the power generating company, had a real interest in carbon sequestration. They have a big carbon footprint. They burn a lot of coal, diesel fuel to generate power. And they were looking for some way to offset that carbon footprint, and also some public relations, of course. They were a green company. They came to us and said, how is longleaf with carbon? And we really weren't sure, but I told them, I said, you know, we release a lot of carbon when we burn longleaf. If you don't burn it, it's just the truth. If you burn it, you get all of those wonderful things that longleaf has. So we know we release a lot of carbon. But if you've ever burned a longleaf stand, you know within days, certainly within a week, it greens back up very quickly. All of those understory plants, the organs are underground, and they begin sucking carbon out of the air to regrow those crops. The products we make are durable. They last a long time, store carbon. That black carbon that's left after a fire is incorporated into the soil, and we have research that shows there's more soil carbon in burned forests than unburned forests. It lives a long time. It stores carbon the whole time. And it stores carbon while it's growing. So if you look at, and I drew this model, and I actually drew it on a bar napkin, with the arrows showing carbon out and carbon in, and I said, actually, it's a carbon sink. It sequesters carbon. And they said, well, that's great. Where'd you get those numbers? I said, well, I made them up. You're the answer you wanted. It's stupid to get another one. So they looked at each other, all those engineers, and went up and said, I'm good with that. And that was 7 years ago, and they put almost $7 million in the longleaf restoration. So the lesson there is first liar has a huge advantage. In the absence of data, make something up. But the Longleaf Alliance, this is a commercial part of this. The Longleaf Alliance began as sort of an unofficial program in the School of Forestry at Auburn University. There were just 4 of us, and it was actually just 3 of us when we started for a couple of years, Mark and Dean Jerstad and myself. And we weren't sure exactly what we were doing. We hired a 4th person, and we began to teach people what we had learned about longleaf. Since that time, The organization has grown slowly. That was 18 years ago, and we're up to 10 people now. So we're not exactly exploding, but we work from Virginia to Texas. We work with any landowner that needs help. We made ourselves a promise when we started, and we stuck to it. One, we would always be honest brokers of information. We'd never oversell longleaf. It's just a tree. It's a good one. It's not for everybody. We would always tell people what we knew and could honestly say. And we would always work with every landowner that approached us for help. And that's not a very cost-effective way to do business when you work in 9 states. But we're still doing it. It doesn't matter if you've got 1,000 acres or 10 acres. If you contact us, we'll try to help you. We go to land and look at it with people when we can. Between Mark and I, we probably get at least 8 to 10 phone calls a day from Virginia to Texas. Very often the same question over and over, but it's new to that person. And we learned that for that man with 10 acres, that's the most important 10 acres in the world. That's more important than Yellowstone for him. And if we tell him that's not important enough for us to come, then we not only lost him, we've made him infinite. So we try to respond to every request. And I think it's been a good strategy for us. We've been as successful as we could have hoped to be. With that, I'm glad Mark is here. If you have any questions, if we can help you in any way, Mr. Dunn and I talked a while ago, please let us do that. We work with all the agents this year. Where's Tim? With Tim and Jody and Josh and the Forestry Commission and the Game and Fish Department, literally in every state in the 9-state region. We've made contacts and friends across the region and established, I think, a degree of credibility that is what we wanted to do when we started. And we have the advantage of being small and private and very flexible. We don't have a lot of bureaucracy in our organization. For instance, England Air Force Base just called and said they had enough money to hire 4 summer interns. But by the time they got them through the security clearances and got all the paperwork done, the summer would be over. He said, what if I gave you the money and you hired them and let them work for me? I said, I don't know, I'll have to run that by a human resources department. Okay. What do you mean, okay? I said, I am the human resources department. He said, is that it? I said, of course not, we got to run it by legal. Okay. He said, you're legal too? I said, yeah, I'm legal too. So we can be very flexible. We can act very quickly when an opportunity presents itself. We can respond very quickly, and that's an advantage. The disadvantage is we're very small. But if you have questions or need help or want help, certainly take advantage of us while we're here. And Mark, I didn't bring any literature, did you?
They got the, most of them, the one at the Long Live Leader, Keys to
Good.
Success, and your economic brochure.
Good. Well, that's got out contact information in it, so please take advantage of it. Thank you, Josh, for the opportunity.
Thank you.